y'all, welcome back to my shop for another one of these four-way projects with Richard Raffin, Sam Angelo, and Tomislav Tomaszek. Today we're turning a shop stool. I'm turning a three-legged stool. There's some advantages to a three-legged stool. This is one I'd made before based on plans from Ernie Conover. Great design, I like it. The advantages of a three-legged stool is basically it'll always be stable on 3 points touching the ground. It takes less material, therefore it's a little bit faster. Not quite as stable as a four-legged stool, but I've found these you know, if they're built properly with the right splay, I've never had any problem with this one, and I use it a lot. One of the challenges of turning a stool is you got to get the legs to match, and in addition, you've got to have the right angle for the splay of the legs to make it nice and stable. You need to figure out how to drill the holes appropriately. And none of these are particularly difficult challenges. You just got to break it down. I'll break it down for you one step at a time so you can make one too. Today I'm using some cherry that was cut green from a tree in my backyard. It's been drying in my shop for over a year. Cut as spindle blanks with the intention of being able to use it for a shop stool. The base, this is a very dried piece of spalted sycamore. It's been in my shop for years. I rough turned it round because I use it as a back plate with hot glue with something else on top of it. It's got a little flat area here. It's about 12 inches across by 2 inches thick. For a shop stool, about 24-25 inches tall. I wouldn't make it much smaller than 12 inches. Some folks might want them a little bit bigger, gives you an opportunity to have the angle a little bit different and splayed out a little bit more. So here are the materials shown in this picture here that we're using. I got 3 pieces of cherry about 1 3/4 inches thick by 25 inches long, and then I've got a couple of pieces that I'll be using for stretchers. I want to thank Alan Leland for the design. He's made an awful lot of these Windsor. It's going to be a Windsor style stool, and I really liked his design a lot. I think it's a great idea to come up with a full-size design. You can get confused with angles. You can struggle with measurements, but if you start with a full-size design, as shown here, it makes it a lot easier. Brown craft paper or newsprint's ideal. You'll need a compass, a straight edge protractor, and a solid flat surface to draw on. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a circle for the leg holes. As I said, I've used this previously before. When I mounted it, I used a woodworm screw that tore out because this is a little softer. I'll probably have to come back and treat it with some wood hardener. But we want to draw a circle around the edge that we're going to drill holes on, so I'll just turn this little plug to put the compass on. And we're going to turn this 2 inches from the edge. I find that to be a pretty good distance. That's where we're going to drill the leg holes, and that gives a nice set. All right, our first mark, we want it on center for where we're going to drill our first holes, so I'm going to mark that. And I'm using a carpenter's pencil this morning. When I sharpened it, I noticed this from Woodturner's Wonders. I'm now a marketing affiliate with Woodturner's Wonders, so I appreciate it if you check out the links in the show notes below. Alright, so we're going to line up with the grain for the first one. We're going to mark it there. Then we're going to come along and we're going to step this out in 6 circles. And this is not perfect, but it's close enough for a shop stool. Alright, so we're going to pick every third one. So we're going to have one hole here, skip one, we're going to have one hole here. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw sight lines down the middle, so when we go to drill these holes, we can get it lined up on our jig. So we're going to put this plug in here so I can make sure I'm going right through the middle. So there's our first sight line for the first hole we're going to drill. And now the next one. Nice 8/4 lumber. That's finished. You don't have to worry about finishing the bottom. In that case, you can use just one chucking like I'm going to do. I'd already smoothed this out previously. If it's fairly smooth, you can obviously use an orbital sander or something to sand it smooth, so you could use one chucking. Otherwise, you might need two chuckings where you turn it on one side, clean off what's going to be the bottom, and then turn it around for the final chucking, so you can dish this out. Now let's go over to the drill press and drill some holes at an appropriate angle. So I made this little angle platform. It's got a hinge on it. I got the plans for this out of Keith Rowley's book, A Foundation Course in Wood Turning. You could also just turn your platform on your drill press and drill in the other direction, or you could just cobble together a board with a support behind it. I thought I'd be making more than one stool when I made this several years ago, and I have. I've made a couple of stools. I made one for my mother-in-law, shown here, kind of clunky looking. Alright, so I've got these little angle blocks that I could put in at different sizes. This is 15 degrees. The one I've got in there is 12, which I think will work out just fine for this particular stool. So we're going to come down and we're going to drill a hole, and I need to set this to go 1 inch deep. So let me measure that. You can see if I'd drawn this circle a little, not 2 inches, but less than that, then the leg's going to stick out a little further, a little more trip hazard. But I think 2 inches is pretty good for me for this size stool. I've got it set now to drill 1 1/4 inch because it's going to be a stopped hole. Your design might call for a through hole, such as I did in this one earlier one I made with Ernie Conover's design, where I used wedges. But in this case, I'm just going to have a stopped hole and use glue. So I've got the depth set to 1 1/4 inches, so here we go. I think the woodworm screw that comes with your normal jaws is a great way to initially mount these. Like I mentioned before, I tore it out because the wood was kind of soft. Obviously a Richard Raffin style screw chuck would work great. I recently made this, but didn't have a chance to use it on this project since the hole was already ripped out. So I turned a recess, and I'm going an 1/8 inch, and I'm just going to mount it using these large jaws with a recess. Now I've got this flat spot, so that's the first thing I'm going to deal with, is getting rid of this flat spot. Take it off, maybe, hopefully no more than 1/4 inch. Okay, I've got it going at about 800 RPM, and I'm going to face this off with a bowl gouge, true it up the bowl gouge. The tool, ride the bevel, move in the direction cut. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to round over the edge. I think I'm going to switch to a different tool. So I'm switching to a bowl gouge with a more swept back wing to make it a little easier to do a scrape if necessary. Coming in from the back side. Now the front side. Okay, I like that. I think that'll work out fine. Now, I want to rough sand the outside a little bit, make it a little faster when I'm finishing later. I'll use a palm sander probably for final sanding, but I'm going to use a coarse grit, get rid of some of this ingrain minor tear out. So I'm going to use 80 grit, follow with 120, and then probably go up to 180. Slow the speed down a bit. I've scribed a line, maybe an inch from the outside. It's kind of a marker to where to start my cut. So I'm going to come in and to the center. It's going to be down maybe a half an inch. If this was harder wood, I'd probably be better off with a scraper, but because of the spalting, I'm afraid I'll get some tear out, so I'm going to use a bowl gouge. I'm going to leave just a little bit of that bit in the middle so I can measure how deep I'm going. I'm getting pretty close. I want to leave room for sanding, and I'm getting a pretty good surface. I'm getting a flat spot there. I think maybe I'm going to true up. I never got this perfectly flat. I'm going to true up the top here. Okay, I've got it scalloped down to a half inch in the center for a nice rump fit. I feel for any lumps and spaces, and I've got it fairly smooth. Now we're going to take out the center. Instead of cutting in this way, we're going to go straight into side grain. It's a little easier, gives it a little better cut. Very nice. Okay. I'm going to scallop this edge in just a little bit, or chamfer it, bring it in. I'm going to use a vacuum chuck. Not something you need for this project normally, except I wouldn't have to do this if I hadn't torn out that middle and had to make this recess. And now I'm going to deal with a little bit of divot in the middle, and then I'll sand it. Okay, I got rid of the sanding marks. I don't believe I'll have to use a palm sander or an orbital sander for this. This will be good enough for the bottom. I'm going to turn a little plug here to cover this hole, turn it into a little feature. Yeah, getting a nice pattern. I'm going to switch to a different tool, get a little different pattern. And then, as always, I'm going to highlight the different patterns with a point tool. And this plug will cover that hole. So now I've got to just turn a 3/8 inch stem on it so it'll fit down the hole and glue it in. For most spindle work, I use I think it's a 5/8 inch Robert Sorby, but for larger projects like this, which I don't often turn large spindle projects, I'm going to use this larger 1-inch Sorby knockoff. It's Apprentice or some Penn State. It's about less than a third of the price. Okay, I turned a sample out of pine, a prototype, and use that to model, take measurements from. I mount it on my lathe using a feature on the Powermatic called a comparator, so I can put it in line with the piece that I'm turning to get those features the same shape with minimal effort. So let's rough it out. So we're just going to get it round. Getting a little bit of vibration and ribbing here. You know, that can be from pressing too hard on the tool, not having a sharp tool, not riding the bevel, turning too fast, turning too slow, not moving the tool too fast, change the lathe speed, all those. The other option is to use some type of steady rest. So I cobbled this one together sometime in the past using some old skateboard wheels, so let's see how that works. So now I've got my steady rest set up. You can see when I turn the spindle, the wheels turn, put a little pressure. Obviously this may mark the wood a little bit, but it's on a part of the wood that's going to come down some, so it won't be a problem. So let's give it a try and see what changes that makes. Make the tool, roll the bevel. I can feel that little bit of ribbing that was there before. And it is definitely cut it off without any vibration, so I'm happy with that. Remember, don't over tighten the tailstock support. You don't want to bind on it. You just want it tight enough to snug so it doesn't get any whip or bow in it that'll cause you some vibration. I'm moving my tool rest down a little ways. Generally, it's a great idea if you've got a feature in the middle to start your piece, turning that feature in the middle, because that's where you have the most amplitude and the vibration will start, and then you can do both ends. So with that in mind, I'm going to start this first feature. I didn't bother to make a story stick. I'm just going to measure off of this one. So the first feature, that V groove, is 75 millimeters, so I mark that. 75. The next one is 210 millimeter. Mark. And as long as these features are measured at the right height, minor differences in thickness should not make any difference. Now let's do those circles. Pencil pointing down. Take this down, and I'm going to set my calipers at 1 inch using this handy shop-made gauge. I've got a video on this under, I don't know, there's a playlist on measurements, measuring and calipers and such. I'm going to make it a little bit large so I can fine-tune it. And I'm going to use the beating and parting tool for that. Still close. Take it off and trial fit it, but I think what I will do is get another pair, more accurate pair of calipers and measure it. So I do a test fit. I've got a nice fit. When I got ready to measure this angle on the new stool, and I just stuck in dry fit the legs, I realized something had horribly gone wrong in the drilling the bottom of the stool. Where this was supposed to be 18.5 inches long, it's only
14.5 inches long, so it's 4 inches off, so it doesn't splay far enough for it to be stable. So I've got to go back and re-drill those holes and plug the old holes.
Okay, I turned some plugs to put in those holes that were a mistake, and use a flush cut saw to trim them off. Okay, let's talk about duplicating spindles. The best way, if you're doing something over and over and over again, is to use a storyboard, such as this one I did a long time ago for a baluster. You know, I've got a storyboard for 2 common handle sizes because I use this a lot in club workshops as well as making my own handles. So, although a storyboard is faster for marking when you're doing a lot of things, if you're not doing many, it takes a while to make a storyboard. So for this, since I've turned a prototype, I'm just going to mark the key features right against the prototype, and I think this is going to be plenty accurate for me. And those are really the only key features I've got to mark. I might mark the low area here. Okay. The other trick for duplicating spindles is obviously the use of calipers. Either you take the measurement off of the storyboard and adjust the caliper, or you take the actual measurement off the sample that you're duplicating in this case and use that. Having more than one is helpful because you don't have to keep adjusting it. So, you know, it could be an inexpensive one from a set of Harbor Freight or something a little bit nicer. Vernier calipers will actually give you the exact measurement. The other one that frankly I don't use a lot is this template. And I've found that in some instances this is very fast to use this. Let me give you an example. So for the end of the spindle, for example, all I've got to do is check it. You can see the gap and tell I'm not there yet, so I've got to go back, and I can check it easily in multiple places. So this can be very handy if you're turning around things. Okay, I have removable pins that the seat sat against, so those pins come out and they go in here and into this angle block, and it makes it easy to drill these holes. You just got to make sure you got that going in the right direction. This is going to be the top. That's why I went ahead and turned these to kind of keep my orientation of which side is up. So we line this up. We turn it in this direction because this has got to extend and it otherwise hit the back of the drill press. So we're just going to get this in position. And now I drill the second front leg the same angle. Now I'm going to measure how wide this stretcher we're going to turn, exactly how long it needs to be. And I'm using a couple of coarse or threaded rod. You can use a couple of dowels, but we're going to measure that length. So I'm going to go ahead and just write that on the end here. Keep up with it. 15 inches. Okay. And I'm going to get I'm going to go ahead and drill the back hole, and we'll measure the length of that after I get this piece turned with a hole drilled in it to make it easy to do the measurement. Now, one of the challenges I have when I get down here to do that round ball foot, I'm going to have to go to a smaller drive center. This is actually 1 1/8, so I can mark it, I can come down to it, start rounding over, but when I go to do this, I'm going to have to be one of the last things I do, so I'll change out that drive. Meanwhile, I'll just start that taper, and I'll mark down here from the other measurement, and the ball is just about 1 1/8. 1 1/8 inches. I'll mark that right here. I've got a knot down here that's going to cause me some consternation, I think. Alright, so let me go ahead and make a V-cut to kind of mark where that ball is going to be. And when I bring that taper down, this end down here is actually, I think, less than an inch. Let me use some calipers on my prototype. And I find it handy. I keep a ruler, got some rare earth magnets that stick on the front of my lathe bed. It just makes it really easy to do quick and dirty measurements. So actually I'm going to bring this down to 7/8 of an inch when I finish turning it. So I'm going to make this long sweep down through here with the spindle roughing gouge. Now I think it's worth noting, on a long run like this, some people will make very precise measurements against their prototype, and then they will make parting cuts down to that and join those. I think on this I can do this just fine by eye, going from this to this on a nice smooth taper. The key is getting this down to the final, get down to the 7/8 so I can bring this all the way down into it. Then I'm just going to feel and examine that taper. I'm getting a little bit of ribbing here, so a little vibration, so I'll have to work that carefully with a skew. And let's try that out. So I raised the tool rest because I want to be cutting at about 11 o'clock, and I'm going to see if I can't use that skew with one hand and bring my hand across. And I want to be careful with this hole. See if I can't deal with that ribbing. The ribbing stops right, goes from about here to here. Let's see where that hole is. Make sure it's not going to get my fingers. Just trying to press here is just a little bit, very light. Just to reduce any vibration. Here's the knot. That's end grain. As I'm rolling over to the right, I'm going to put my finger on top of the spindle gouge so it turns very naturally like that. And I think that's probably getting pretty close. I don't want to get too thin at the bottom. And I don't want a weak point by making a V there. I just want it to flow. Now I'm going to continue this movement on the spindle roughing gouge. Now that I've turned my first one, I replaced the original prototype out of pine with this one because this is probably a little closer, truer representation of what the other two ought to look like. So we're going to start first on this feature. So I'm going to start this V-cut right here, and then we'll make a V-cut here. This spindle should go faster than the first one, and the third one even faster than that. Now we're going to round over this bottom edge. This one I'm going to take this down just a little bit. This whole section is going to be about a 1/4 inch less than the one above it. So let's go ahead and get that down now. And actually, it might make it easier if I start this little cut right, this little cove at the appropriate distance. It gives my eye something to adjust from. And since it's in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and use this to roll over this feature. Clean up that toolbar. It's a little harder to get down in that V. I think I'll have to come back and clean that up. Right next to it, I'm going to do a round over. I'm going to start cut back here. Knock off the corner, actually. Further back. Swing the handle around. Keep swinging that handle. Keep swinging that handle. And that's pretty much got that shape there. Now I'll come back for this shape. I'm going to start this round over just a little bit further back. And then round over the other direction. A little more pressure. You switch back at 3H. Spindle out, go back to the chart. Basically, this is just cool. So just go with that. Again, finger on top. Rolling over on the right hand side. And drop the handle and scoop up the middle. And I'm just going to eyeball the dimensions versus the prototype. Just kind of get close. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we're not making fine furniture, we're just developing our skills a little bit. That's about the way I want it. Now I start to taper down on the bottom. Before they do that, I think I'm going to work on the upper part, so I'm going to have to move the steady rest. After you've sanded it, it pays to come back and kind of crisp up. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Where we've got a feature like a deep V here, 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 and here. We're just going to go vertical with a skew and just crisp it up a little bit. Doesn't take but a second, and it really just adds a little more refinement, a little more detail. You can steady this even further with your hand, either bringing it back under or bring it over top, but just a very light pressure. And then again, go back and look for flat spots. I think that's probably close enough. I'll handle it in the middle. We're not on this side. Underneath the drop light. Alright, I'm going to sand this. I'm going to slow the speed down. I'm going to sand it 120. It won't go up probably higher than 180. Use a wide piece to get those nice flowing curves. Being very careful not to round over and loosen the detail. Come off that edge. Don't round it over. I don't want to lose that crisp detail. We're not making fine furniture here. We're just preparing for fine furniture. This is a shop stool, so I'm not going to get crazy about any particular detail. You want to be sure to sand with the grain. Get rid of any radial scratches, especially on these long runs like this. Here's the technique you use for measuring the cross braces. You can use dowels or you can use a threaded rod. Threaded rod is convenient for me because I happen to have these on hand. So you're going to measure the distance from the bottom of the hole to the bottom of the hole and add 1/8 of an inch. I'm getting ready to turn the final piece that's going to join that front cross brace with the one toward the back. I'm going to take the drawing and use it to mark these off. All right, first we're going to start with tenon on each end. Take it down to 5/8. We're going to use the spindle gouge, and we're going to make a, I don't know what you call this feature, almost a stool. I know it's not necessary to remind you experienced flat workers the importance to do a dry assembly before you put the glue on it. And when you do glue it, whack all the joints with a mallet. Make sure they're fitting nice and tight. I finished with about 2 or 3 coats of boiled linseed oil. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up to make it easier for other folks to find it. And don't forget to check out the videos of my four-way collaboration partners, Richard Raffin, Sam Angelo, and Tomislav Tomasek. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back here.